We begin in the Middle East. The U.S. Air Force carried out airstrikes in eastern Syria on Tuesday night. A-10 Thunderbolt ground attack aircraft, which are deployed in Syria, bombed militants that were preparing to launch large-scale attacks on American troops. Washington has called the airstrike self-defense as jets swept into action to defend American ground forces.
This morning, U.S. Central Command forces successfully destroyed several weapon systems in the vicinity of military support site Euphrates in Syria that included 3 truck-mounted multiple rocket launchers, a T-64 tank, and mortars that presented a clear and imminent threat to U.S. and coalition forces. The self-defense strike occurred after the mobile multiple rocket launchers fired rockets that landed in the vicinity of MSS Euphrates, and mortars were fired towards U.S. forces.
Now, there are about 900 American troops deployed in eastern Syria who are instrumental in tracking the movements of terror groups in the region. And ever since the anti-government rebels swept through western Syria, the U.S. troops in the east have come under heavy fire.
We're still assessing who is operating these weapons, but do know that there are Iranian-backed militia groups in the area that have conducted attacks on MSS Euphrates in the past. There are also Syrian military forces that operate in the area. To be clear, these self-defense actions successfully eliminated imminent threats to U.S. personnel and were not linked to any broader activities in northwest Syria by other groups.
Meanwhile, anti-government Islamist rebels are now on the outskirts of the central city of Hama after having already captured Idlib and Aleppo. If Hama fails, the rebel forces will then be just about 100 miles away from the capital, Damascus, where Syria's leader Bashar Al-Assad is fortifying his presidential palace.
It's our homeland. We're living in our homeland, on our land, in our country. We won't leave, that's all. Whatever happens, we won't leave.
Syria, our troops, our young people, they're what's right. But the rebels are all strangers who want to control the country. It's clear what they want. They want to steal, to loot. They want everything. That's not a war. It's a war of thieves.
Meanwhile, the United States and Russia accused each other for the chaos in Syria, with Washington blaming Moscow for supporting terrorism in the region.
The fact that HTS is listed as a terrorist organization by the U.S. and UN does not justify the further atrocities by the Assad regime and its Russian backers. Since November 27, these have included attacks by the regime and its Russian backers on schools and hospitals in both Idlib and Aleppo, causing civilian casualties.
You have been asserting that the attacks against Syria were perpetrated by certain rebels whom, in your nefarious picture of the world, the terrorists and extremists transform into attacking those countries who are carrying out independent policy that does not advance the interests of the United States, policies that do not advance U.S. interests. You did not even notice how you betrayed yourselves, having promised to protect not the lives of ordinary civilians, but just those of U.S. troops who are illegally occupying certain areas of Syria and who are unconscionably looting the resources of that country.
Now, the United States has had a military presence in Syria since 2014 when it entered the region to defeat ISIS. 5 years later, in 2019, Washington defeated the terror network in Syria, but has maintained a sizable troop contingent in the country's east to prevent ISIS from ever returning.